art? What is
Okay.
art?
So let's.
Maybe you can come closer. If you need this chair.
Let's start the first, and we will be monitoring with that. Okay, so let's start the first series of conversations about the topics in the two classes, ATEX 6300 and ATEX 6331. So to remind everyone about the principle of these conversations, they take place every Monday from 1 to 2, from 2 to 3. In ATC 3.201, which is the small sound lab on the third floor. They are broadcasted live on YouTube, and the link is provided in the announcement in the website of the two classes. So you're welcome to watch it live, or you can even watch it later. So today we are just the three of us, myself, Yvan, Tina, and Ariel, who is enrolled, I think, in both classes, no, just 6300. And we wanted to start these discussions by the number one topic, which is, well, to say abruptly, it's about aesthetics, but with really one main question, which is, okay, about digital art in general. And basically that topic came to my mind after hearing a lot of remarks about the late Aurora Festival. And everyone was thinking almost the exact same thing. It's great, but what makes it different than the experience of a nightclub with laser shows and lights and loud music and stuff like that? So one of the questions was, okay, what's so typical of contemporary art, and how is it different, or is it different than traditional art? Okay, so
one of the questions that I would like to ask you would be, to my opinion, is how can one translate or embed concept into digital medium? That would be my question. Or maybe one of the difficulty that I see at work with digital medium.
So you see a difficulty of connecting digital
digital materials, digital tools, not of connecting, but of how to embed, how to translate a concept, an idea, with those tools, with those technology.
So okay, so I see.
For example, in Cubism, I think the intent was to give different perspective, and for example, perspective and life, basically, and it was to open up, to broaden the human kind of perception. But actually, I'm referring here to a book, Linda Henderson, who published a book about the fourth dimension and how science has, influenced the way the art in the 20th century has evolved. And I wonder if today someone could make the same thing with computers. I mean, there's probably artists doing that, but why there's not much artists doing, trying to illustrate or to expand our mental or imaginary perception.
Okay, so and that's in itself, this is the number one question, which is, well, is this really what defines art? Meaning that capacity to embed concept within objects and experiences. Is this what defines art? And I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure that art should have the goal of expanding human knowledge or exploring new intellectual avenues.
You don't think so?
I'm not saying that I don't think so. I'm saying that I need to question that first.
Okay.
Okay, and first I think that we need to verify that this is true. Okay, and because if we assume that this is true, so art is in itself not different than science. Okay, if the main goal of art is to produce a tangible outcome in relationship to human knowledge, it really is the exact same thing than science.
I haven't said tangible though.
Or significant.
I mean an idea. You can. I mean, yeah.
So and this is what I want to question is art meant to generate ideas? And that's the thing that we need to question first. Because I'm not sure that art is meant to generate ideas. So let's start with that, and maybe we will be able to move into digital art if we first define, okay, what do you mean by art? And especially when we are looking from now over centuries, where we have multiple forms of art, multiple forms of expressions that we group together under the umbrella of art. Okay, so normally from that viewpoint, we should have a broad view on what is art, and we should be able to understand digital art from that perspective. So let's look at that, and let's look at what we have over these centuries of things. So number one question would be, do we have one single thing that we call art and that makes it a distinct human activity? Okay, to me that would be the question is, if we look over the centuries, is there something that allows us to differentiate art from any other human activities? That's what we want to question. If we want to understand art as something distinct, we need to be able to identify that difference. So for example, how art is different from that very simple perspective from technological activities.
Technological activities?
Like making buildings, making machines, cars, and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so is art different?
Like in architecture, what's the difference? Yeah, what is the... You're raising the question of functionality. Or you're talking about something?
No, I'm just talking about, okay, is there a difference between creating something that you call a work of art and creating an object that is purely functional?
Okay.
So in the activity itself, is there a difference? Okay, because, and I'm not sure even that this is the right question, because the question would be, and the answer would be within the intentionality. Okay, and one could come up with an easy answer where art is an object that is created with an intentionality or an intention that is different than the one that triggers the creation of a functional object. Okay, so maybe it's there, so maybe we should look at that, and maybe we should question that very simple idea. Art is different from any other activities because the intention of the artist is different than the intention of anyone else doing any other kind of object. So maybe in the creation of the work of art, there is the full awareness from the one who is making the work of art that what he or she is doing is a work of art and nothing else.
So we're still in the framework of Western tradition and Western
Yes,
art?
yeah,
Because
we're looking at, it's already large enough. So,
but if so, then how can the definition be um, uh, universal or expanded to other artistic production
mhm.
and coming from the Western world if um, if we have a limited framework, which is the Western one? So how can we define what art is if we're not taking into account other?
Well, it's simply because of a lack of knowledge,
Mm-hmm,
and that's why we are, we need to limit the scope of our discussion to the thing that we think we know, which is the Western tradition of art.
mm-hmm.
And we do not pretend to have a universal view on things.
No, but even considering the Western world, how if we're still questioning the notion of intention,
Mm-hmm.
when we look back at the Greek architecture, for example, um, clearly those are those buildings like the Parthenon and
Mm-hmm.
you know when maybe constructed with the idea of making a piece of art, but we're not sure about that.
Mm-hmm.
It could also just have a social,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
importance or relevance for those people back in the time. So yeah, this question of intention is also determined by uh, time. We
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about chronological time. We're looking for back in the past and are trying
Mm-hmm.
to define what have been done
Yeah.
according to our own
Mm-hmm.
definition today. Yeah, so that was just a question that I had in mind. So intentionality, you have the intention of the one who is making the art piece, but you
Mm-hmm.
also have the intention of the spectator who is reading
Who's
or
receiving it?
who is receiving it. So
Yeah.
how do you make the difference between the two
Well,
in
but
order to determine what is art?
well, that's kind of fairly easy, and that's very different. It's the intention of the artist is something that is completely impossible to verify.
Yep.
Okay, it's an information for most of the works of art that we do not have.
So then, is it a valid question?
Well, no, and but that's the beginning is the question of the intention a
Mm,
good way to be able to distinguish works of art from other objects? Because for some objects, we have difficulties answering this question. Is it a work of art or is it just an object that has some functionality? So what makes the difference? So is the difference within the one who created the object,
mm-hmm,
saying that the artist is fully aware that he's doing a work of art and
mm-hmm,
the other one is not aware that he's
mm-hmm,
doing a work of art?
mm-hmm.
Is this a valid way to look for the answer to ask that question? Probably not. So we need to find yet another way. And maybe there's no way in this direction, and that's progressively where I'm coming.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, trying to exhaust all the possible hypotheses on defining works of art.
Yeah.
Okay, and basically refuting all of them and saying that there's only one possible way to understand what is a work of art is just to ask the question for ourselves today, and asking the question of the work of art only on the side of the contemporary reception of it. And that way we are sure that we are dealing with high quality subjective data about the work of art,
Mm-hmm.
which is the data that all of us can produce by means of introspective reflection upon the reception of the work of art. Okay, and that's where I want to frame that definition of what is a work of art, is to frame that within the contemporary perception of people who are receiving things and deciding this is a work of art and this is not a work of art from my own viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a strictly phenomenological position that I'm taking right now, because it feels to me that we are in a typical case where phenomenology is the only or the most valid methodology to conduct a study.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because we are dealing with subjective matter, and and number two, so subjective matter meaning subjective assessment of something,
Mm-hmm.
and number two, we are dealing with human consciousness. Okay, and that's the best way to inquire about that is phenomenological study.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and not typical psychological study, because if I go with the traditional quantitative method in psychology and present a work of art to 2,000 people and ask them to assess that, I will have an average answer
Mm-hmm.
and saying, okay, 80% of the population decided that this was a work of art and 20 decided that it was not.
Yeah.
And we are left with no
Nothing.
valid conclusion. So with a phenomenological inquiry, we will be able to understand the structure of the experience of the encounter with a work of art and what makes us feel and understand that we are standing in front of a work of art and not. So basically, and that's what I'm asking in the class, especially in 6331, I'm asking students to really look at the proposed works of art and reflect upon their perception of the work of art.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the idea is to really try to understand what's going on at the intersection of these perceptual invariants that are generated by the work of art,
Mm-hmm.
the sounds, the images, the shapes, the colors, and the way we interpret them in terms of values, meanings, and emotions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so and it's highly subjective. And to me, what's interesting is to agglomerate these subjectivities, make a synthesis of all of that, to try to see if we have across multiple subjectivities some things that allow us to understand better each works of art.
So you have wiped out the question of ideas,
Yeah,
the question of intentionality, right?
yeah,
So you're coming
completely.
now to the question of experience itself.
Exactly, yeah.
So
So yes, we need to clear the horizon of
okay.
aesthetics and to clear it from these questions about intention of the artist, social value of the work of art,
Yeah.
and we want to just look at one thing, which is to me the only important thing in the artistic realm, which is the experience of the viewers of the work of art.
Okay.
I don't care about, and I'm not an art historian, and I'm not an art critic,
Mm-hmm.
and my answer in these dimensions will never be right.
So the question then, if I was able to reframe it, would be why technological related art is weak in terms of experience or in terms of
Okay, and now we are dealing with real questions.
yeah.
Okay, so what is typical of the contemporary digital art in its ways of being manifested to its audience? Okay, because that's what we are looking at in phenomenology. It's the phenomenon which is the manifestation of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is there something typical in the manifestation of the digital work of art? Is there something different that makes it really different than any other works of art?
Mm.
And that's, to me, that's a question that we can tackle. And we can really understand many, many things from that. So, for example, let's look at a work of art that is using a computer screen and a whole computer system to be delivered. Okay?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So now what we have in front of the viewer, it's a multi-function device
Mm-hmm.
on which the user is reading emails, being informed of the news and stuff like that. So we have a context, a general context of the interaction with the work of art that is completely similar. It's the exact same one, it's the exact same interface, and it's the exact same technology that is mediating works of art and many, many, many other forms of delivery of information.
Mm-hmm.
So probably there's one interesting question about the work of art is how does the work of art stand out and manifest itself in a different way in that context that tends to really erase all the differences.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's the problem of the predominance of technology. So the technology dictates the context of the manifestation.
Yeah, that's.
And that context is not neutral. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
context is not neutral, and in fact, it's neutralizing,
Mm-hmm.
which is the opposite of being neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So there's already a first effect in the very simple manifestation of the work of art that tends to minimize its differences. To look at a painting, you go to a museum. And in a museum, most of the things that you see are works of art. The museum is creating a context that differentiates the objects that are presented in the museum. The computer creates a context in which everything is equal.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no set differences.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably in the experience of the viewer of a work of art on a computer, something that really explains part of the negative feedback that we have. Okay, and it's also a context in which people are playing games and communicating with other ones, so that has an effect of really making the work of art much more mundane object than
So
an exceptional one.
I was reading. I mean, I'm still reading a paper yesterday, and which made me think about this notion of performance as something which is framed,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of echo with what you're saying now. So
Mm-hmm.
then my question was, because while listening to you, I was thinking about performance art. You
Mm-hmm.
know, those things that happen in public space, for
Yeah.
example. So, and I was thinking that maybe that they manifest themselves as art events because they are framed in a specific, even though they're part of the flow of life. So my question was, how do you frame an artwork how do you see the possibilities of framing with the computer interface?
Okay, so framing
Yeah.
in the sense where you're using it
Mm-hmm.
primarily consists in creating boundaries.
Yeah.
Okay, and I would say number one, temporal boundaries.
Uh-huh.
The work of art starts at one point,
Mm-hmm.
it exists, and then it stops. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so number one, you need to set temporal boundaries. So the work of art has to manifest its beginning. Okay, so it has to produce a certain effect that is clearly legible as the beginning of something, just like a street performance.
Yes.
Okay, a street performance starts only when, for the viewers, for the people, the onlookers,
Yes.
when they realize that something is going on. So there's a boundary that is emerging, and they start differentiating that moment from everything that's going on. So work of art in a computer has to have
Mm-hmm.
a kind of self-defined and only locally defined boundaries from everything else. It has to differentiate itself from the flux of things that are coming from the computer.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be by means of sound, by means of screen, something has to happen to really manifest the beginning of something different. And then some kind of level of difference has to be maintained. For example, if you're using again that same interface of the computer, there needs to be probably some kind of difference of the way you interface the user or the viewer with the work of art. So if it's just using the same tools that you're usually using to read your emails or to browse on the internet, suddenly the experience becomes again not differentiated and the work of art tends to disappear. So number one, invention of an initial boundary, and number two, sustaining that idea of difference is necessary.
Sustaining the idea of difference.
Yeah, so what's happening in the screen, on the screen of your computer and through your loudspeaker is different from everything else. And sometimes we can all agree that some works of art fail at establishing that.
So beyond the interface, I guess when we talk about technological related art, we also think about other manifestation like robotics, whatever, you have different type of technology. So would you see the same weakness across all the different possibilities of expression, or is it related to the computer interface?
Well, it's not limited to the digital art, that idea of an experience that differentiates itself from the other experiences. For example, reading poetry. Okay, so
yeah, that's actually a good example. So why in the framework of digital poetry, I'm experiencing something, even though it is on this interface, I can experience the same thing as if I was reading a book, for example. And why this happens in the field, for example, of digital poetry, and not in more visual graphics kind of work.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Do you think that language or literature has something more than you can't find in a visual work?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I was almost said to say, okay, but what we are saying about computers exists for other forms of art. For example, poetry. Okay, the medium, the book, it's something that is used to deliver contents like cooking recipes or accounting and stuff like that. So, and poems. So what makes the experience different when you're reading poetry than when you're reading a cookbook or something else? Okay, so definitely it's not in the interface. The interface is the same. So what's going on when I'm reading a book that makes me feel and that engage me in such a way that I instantly understand that I'm reading poetry? Okay, when you look at traditional poetry, okay, it uses rhymes and stuff like that, and the kind of vocabulary that's been used is different than the other one, so there's clearly a technical aspect of it, technological manifestation that is different. There's even a way to set the words on the page and organize the words on the page that is different. But then in the experience of reading is the same than reading anything else. So what is sustaining the fact that you're reading poetry?
Okay.
And it's, okay, what's going on when you're engaged in the artistic experience? So you've gone through the differentiation between the work of art and what is traditionally pushed or displayed with the medium.
Mm-hmm.
What is sustaining the experience of the work of art and what makes it valuable and what is conveying meanings is the next question. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on? And that's the difficult question, because from that question you see that we can go into, okay, what makes me feel that this poem is good and this one is not. Okay, so now we can, once we framed everything within the experience, now, okay, we have identified the question of the boundaries, the difference of the experience, and now the sustainability of the experience, and how the experience is structured and how it's forming a network of values and stuff like that.
Okay.
So,
No, go ahead.
so, but there's no, the idea is that there's no set answer, okay? There's not one answer.
Mm-hmm.
The answer is only, well, you know, if I want to know the answer about that poem or about that work of art, I need to study it.
Mm.
And that's basically what I'm saying is that we cannot answer the question, is digital art good or bad? Because, and I refuse to go into that, because to me there's no answer. The answer would be always dogmatic and would reflect a predetermined judgment about the work of art and the type of the work of art. And I don't want to go into this direction. I want to remain true to the experience, and the experience is always different if it's you or if it's another poem. And I cannot form a set answer for everything.
Earlier in the discussion, in the conversation, you was talking about the neutrality or the non-neutrality of technology.
Mm-hmm.
And by trying to link it with this notion of framework, I would like you maybe to expand this idea. What do you mean by saying that technology is not neutral? And also, in this framework, do you
Mm-hmm.
think that there's a space or room for shaping boundaries? I mean, how would um, a boundary created with technology not being influenced by its ideology?
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's the right way to ask the question.
Yeah, so number one question, it's about technology. Technology is not neutral.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so and maybe
Simondon.
yeah, exactly. So maybe we need to look at, okay, what is technology?
Yeah.
Okay, and the definition I'm using of technology is any way of externalizing human knowledge
Mm-hmm.
and transforming human knowledge into artifacts. So anything that does that is technology. Okay? And in fact,
So
the
memory is a technology.
memory is, well, no, memory is not a technology until it's stored outside of the human brain. Okay? It's only when it's made available outside, when it's externalized, that it's technology. So number one, technology, and the archetype of technology for me is language.
Writing?
Yeah.
Or language in
language
general?
in general. Language
Okay.
in general is the archetype of technology, and any technology is only but a subset of language.
So just before you go further, what are we talking about when we talk about technology correlated art? Because assuming by taking your definition,
Mm-hmm.
I would assume that actually art has always been technological.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always. Yeah. And there's no art without technology. It's impossible that there is any art
A
with
song
that.
is a technology? Would you,
Well, a sound,
a song, for example,
yeah,
let's say a ritual song or sound
well,
music?
music
Yeah.
is technology because music it's a way to encode acoustic phenomena
Mm-hmm.
and to reorganize them in a certain way. And it's a technology applied to acoustical phenomena.
Okay.
So yes, music is a technology.
What about cave paintings? I'm thinking
Cave
of Lascaux
paintings,
and
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It is a technology.
Yeah.
It is a technology, which means it is a way to externalize something, which is human knowledge. Okay, what I know about my presence. Okay, and the fact of creating an imprint of my hand,
Mhm.
I realize suddenly that I can manifest my presence by something else than myself. So the idea of having a substitution of the body by a trace of the body, it's already a technological invention. Okay, and it's the number one technological invention that allows for the invention of language, where the signs that we are producing are always smaller and in more limited numbers than the reality we want to represent. There's always this kind of relationship, and what is very interesting suddenly in the cave paintings is when you see, for example, a triangle, okay, which is nothing.
Mhm.
But suddenly a triangle can become the nose of an animal in one of the paintings. And also, depending on the way it's oriented, it can become also the pubic area of the woman and stuff like that. So you see that it's the invention of the sign, and the invention of the sign is technology. It's a way to externalize knowledge,
But
vision.
so there's different. If I extend your idea,
Mhm.
if language is technology,
Yeah.
then there is natural ways to externalize. Like, would you say that voice is a technology?
Yeah, voice is a technology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Voice is a technology. It's really, well, the vocal cords, it's a technological device that has evolved according to our desire to form sounds to express ourselves
Okay.
and to differentiate these sounds from the sounds existing outside,
Mm-hmm.
and also to have special types of articulation that can be universally recognized. So it's the human language and the vocal language, it's a high level of technology. And you see that the technology, you cannot say it's inside or outside.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I'm using to project outside something that is inside. So technology is always somehow at the interface between the inner part of myself and the external world. It's always what makes me connected with the external world. On
Okay.
the question of transmission of knowledge.
So if we are reframing the the, the question,
Mhm.
we are talking about now we're talking about this. I would call it natural technology, for example. No.
What would be non-natural technology that does not exist?
Mm-hmm.
Because technology is human.
Yeah. 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 Of course.
So any technology is natural or human, even if it uses electricity,
Mm-hmm.
because its purpose is always the same. Its purpose is to serve as an interface between individual knowledge and collective knowledge, or individual experience and collective knowledge. So it's always.
So, but see, if I come back again, okay, I agree with you. My question was not about natural and unnatural.
Mhm.
It was about what makes the difference between the type of work that we're trying to address now
Mhm.
and the one that seems to be linked to more traditional forms of expression, like language, etc.
Well, to me, there's no difference. from that strict theoretical viewpoint, there's absolutely no difference.
No, but we're trying to your starting question was about the
Yeah,
weakness of or kind
yeah.
of weakness of
So why and so when we come back to the question, why do we experience weakness
yes,
in digital art?
yeah, digital art.
What's going on? And I think that's even that question is wrong, because we experienced weakness in poetry in the 19th century.
Of course.
Okay, just the same as we experience weakness in digital arts today. There's good works of art and there's works of art that are less good, and it has always been the case. And it's the same with digital art, except that today we have an opening. We have a horizon of availability of works of art that is way larger than the one we had before.
We have more art, maybe.
Yeah,
today.
we have more objects and we have more
objects.
fluid access to a multiplicity of objects, and especially digital objects. Digital objects are the most available objects today. So obviously that creates that huge number of things, and yes, in that flux of digital works of art, yes, some of them are good and some of them are exceptional. And because when something that is more interesting to me is, instead of saying, okay, it's not that good, let's look at the exception.
Yes.
Because looking at the average is boring. Okay, it's not interesting to look at the average. Look at the exception, and let's look at the works of art, digital works of art that really touch us, that have on us an effect that we would qualify as identical to any other work of art. And for example, in the context of the class, we should talk about comparing a digital work of art to a film, because film is a very popular type of art in that generation. And the question for my students would be, okay, for example, look at Bill Viola, or look at another video artist, or look at another artist doing installations. Talk to me about the similarities in your experience between this work of art and a film that you term a great film. And that is interesting as a question. Instead of saying, okay, why is digital art weak? Let's say, okay, when we experience great digital art, what is this that's going on? What's happening? And do we recognize something that we knew already in terms of experience, structure of the experience, values, meanings, and emotion? Do we recognize something? And maybe what we recognize is the unknown, or the strangeness, or the openness. I don't know. But I think it's probably the best way to inquire about digital art than trying to say is it good or bad. And basically that's how in 6331 I want people to interact and question is, look at works of art and tell me exactly what is going on. And some of them are bad, and I'm very much interested in the experiences where someone is saying, okay, it's bad. And that's a good start.
Yeah.
Because now we need to understand where exactly does the badness of the work of art originate.
Yeah.
What does that do to you? And what is there that does you something in the badness of the thing? So for example, I had a student writing on a digital work of art that is made from YouTube videos, from cat YouTube videos. Okay, cats playing the piano. Okay,
playing a piece.
Yeah, and there's an artist who took the Klavierstücke by Stockhausen exactly 100 years after the creation of the piece. Okay, so in 2009, he takes the score of the Klavierstücke and with a program that he creates himself, he extracts from YouTube videos of cats playing the piano the exact notes that he needs to assemble together to recreate the original score by Schoenberg. So you can hear Schoenberg's piece being played by fragments of cats playing the piano. To me, that work of art is great, and I really like it. And my student, she hated it. She thought that the YouTube videos were great and beautiful because they reflected on people's life and emotions and stuff like that. And she thought that the piano piece, the original piano piece, was terrible. And so now I need to discuss with them and we need to understand better. And she uses, okay, it's because it sounds like random notes. There's dead spaces or air and stuff like that. And I'm saying, okay, you need to listen back to the original piece and do something, but you need to understand, okay, exactly what's going on when you say it's bad. And what exactly are you assessing when you're saying it's bad? What are you listening to? And that's the question of perception. Really, we need to go back to this is, what are you listening to when you're talking about that, and what are you looking at? And how all of that is this informed by what you know of the work of art. And you need to know something about the work of art, okay? Because I do not believe either in a completely innocent discovery of the work of art that negates the existence of the work of art as a work of art. When you go into studying a work of art, you need to know first that this is a work of art and where it comes from. I do not believe into random encounters with works of art and people discovering that this is great. Okay, the experience that we are trying to simulate and to study is the presentation of a work of art. You are informed about the context of its creation, the theoretical context, the historical one, and in that context, you experience the work of art. Okay, so for example, in that case, knowing that the YouTube mashup of cats playing the piano is made exactly 100 years after the creation of the original piece is really an integral component of the framing of the experience of the work of art. Okay, and understanding also better what is Schoenberg's technical way of composing, what is the theoretical fact driving the way he's composing music, which is mathematical series. And if you are able to understand that there is this attempt at really applying mathematical series to composing, and then on the other side, 100 years later, there's a program that is used to retrieve that and to revitalize that, but to apply it to another set of data. So in the case of Schoenberg, you're dealing with pure data, which is the sound of a piano. And you have the exact same thing, music as an algorithm. Okay, so here in Schoenberg, the original piece, it's applied to really beautiful data, which is the sound of a piano. And here it's applied to a poor set of data, which is very bad recordings of a very bad piano being played in a completely random way by a cat. But you have the exact same process, and then that work of art has another meaning. Okay, meaning because it's exploring something very interesting, which is the relationship between a program and the actualization of the program. Okay, so now you can look at the piece and talk to me about that. But if you do not do that work, you're not entitled to talk about the piece. Okay, and that's interesting because that's also a question we had with Loris Gréau,
Mm-hmm.
and really requiring from the audience to be aware of what it is before being able to assess it. Okay, and it's only when you're fully aware of what it is that you can engage into a subjective experience and go into that subjective assessment of the work of art. But if you do not have that theoretical layer, or I should say, in another way, if you do not assume the existence of the work of art as a work of art, that doesn't work. My methodology doesn't work.
Okay.
Okay.
So I had a question about, because I think first, um, I'm not sure if you have answered the previous question about how does the ideology of technology help on not frame an experience of the
Oh yeah.
artwork. And the next question, no, just if you can
Yeah.
reply to that, because the next question will be about, because you have identified the interface for computer production, but what about other media? What
Okay.
about,
So let's go
maybe,
back
yeah.
to ideology of technology.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so technology always.
And how can it influence
Uh-huh.
the type of, yeah.
So technology is always completely nested within social and political networks, because that's at the core of the function, which is collectively distributing things. Okay, so technology always expands over these social and political networks. Okay, and social and political networks always feed back into technology to change it and to transform it. Okay, so technology, it's always at the same time a reflection on the human being, but it's also a reflection on how the human being is connected within the societies in which he exists. And obviously, the political order that exists within the technological environment is always shaping, reframing technology. So, for example, look at the technology of language.
Yes.
Okay, technology of language is a highly political technology.
Yes.
Like the meanings of the words are assigned and negotiated within that political society. Okay, there are words that you may say or not say, and the meanings of the words change over centuries because of technological evolution. So technology is never neutral in terms of political impact.
Yeah.
So that was
okay,
the
so
question.
I understand, but okay, now let's just move to the other question, which was because you have identified the lack of variety between the interface in a computer. But do you have any other points, or do you have any other idea for? Do you have the same? Have you identified the same problems with other mediums, like for the screen? I understand that you're talking about the interface, but what about a 3D printing? What can I say? Robotics cases, or
I was thinking with the projections, onto buildings.
yeah, video mapping, for example.
Yeah.
Etc. etc. So yeah, have you identified other problem, other issues that can
that are specific to the modes of display and
exactly,
and delivery?
And that have an influence on our perception and the judgment we assign to artwork?
Well,
you see what I'm saying? Because basically, if I come back to the beginning of our talk, you were saying that we are experiencing everything on the same interface.
Yeah,
I'm reading my email here,
yeah.
I'm watching news, etc., etc. So when the times comes to experience an artwork, there's no real framing, there's no manifestation of the artwork. So this is for the computer interface. How does it work for a different object?
And it does not directly answer the question. It's the idea of, so for example, projection mapping or video mapping. So it's different from urban light. Well, because of, and it's different from other kinds of projection because it's monumental. So the size comes here to express something that is different, that differentiates the expression. And that tends to say, well, look, this is different. This is a work of art. And I think that we see that a lot in contemporary art. The use of scale to differentiate the artistic objects. There's a tendency today to make gigantic objects and monumental art. And it can be very simply to create that initial difference. You're looking at something and it's huge. It's tons of metal or tons of megawatts of power to project the thing. So the monumental effect is probably something that tends to look for that initial boundary of the work of art. And for example, there's also the same problem between immersive art and video games. Okay, so you need to really find a way to differentiate an immersive work of art from a video game. So yes, we have that problem constantly of differentiating.
So you was talking about scalability.
So scalability is probably the number one thing.
Okay. Maybe last question because it's been an hour now. I'm gonna ask. I'm asking question, but you can interject yours if you want. I want to come back about the idea of language. Do you agree to extend the realm of language to basically anything when we talk about its plasticity? And because I was thinking that, it seems, according to science, that we tend to be at the beginning, when we just born, we are sensible to different frequencies, for example. And you can, for example, play with little children, not by just speaking, also by making noise and manipulating things. So, while thinking about language, I was wondering if when people talk about the language, for example, in theater, they talk about the language of the stage. You can integrate different elements. You're going to tell me if you agree with that. But how do you articulate that with your own definition of technology as language? If you can actually extend language to much more things than just speech and text, basically.
Okay, so, and there's...
If you see language as a color, for example, or a sound.
So, and that's a question. So I define again language as a way to externalize.
Technology, you mean?
And language.
Language also?
It's a way to externalize some elements of knowledge.
Okay.
And language you can externalize in two ways. You can speak and you can write. Okay. And also the language it's both ways. Okay. It's something that you can experience and that can transfer back into knowledge. Okay, because I'm talking and you're listening to me. So the words, the acoustical phenomena that I'm producing, they would become meanings in your mind. Okay? And you will be able to take them back for yourself. So the question of the language is always bidirectional. It goes from the inside to the outside and then from the outside back to the inside of someone else. Okay, and in technology is the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a language or it's a technology only if you have that loop,
Mm-hmm.
and only if you have some kind of consensual agreement on what has been exchanged through the process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, meaning that when I'm talking, we have an average agreement on what I'm saying
Mm-hmm.
and what you understand from what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's probably where question of other languages, is there a language of colors?
Mm-hmm.
I would say probably not, because and I'm saying probably because we do not have that form of agreement that goes from my mind to the object and from an object to your mind.
But you know, for example, that you have people who are, what's the name of, synesthetic?
Yeah,
Synesthesia.
yeah, could have synesthesia. Yeah,
Okay. So, yeah, maybe that for this kind of people, colors has the same value than text and
yeah, but it's not shareable.
yeah.
And the difficulty is that we cannot have that sort of agreement on the loop from the inside to the outside and the outside back to the inside. So, for example, when I'm talking to someone who has synesthesia, I do not know if my words sound red, green, or blue. I have no idea of it. And that's why it's not a language. It's because there's no possibility of a collective agreement on what has been exchanged by means of produced objects.
This notion of collective agreement.
It's the political dimension of
It's a
technology.
political dimension of,
yeah,
and of art also.
And of art, same thing. Should we stop now?
Yeah, so do you have any conclusion for all the people, just to sum up
Well,
what they can retain from this
No,
discussion? I don't know.
The only thing you should retain from the discussion is that you need to come. And we need to find a way to incorporate your live feedback to these conversations. Okay, but we'll be happy with the not live feedback. So, yeah, see you next week, and I will check on the 2 websites of the classes your reactions to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.